Hello everyone and welcome to the Jackknife channel where we exclusively make Jackknife content. In all seriousness, I have made a lot of Jackknife videos recently and it's because I'm really enjoying the deck and I feel people kind of respond to my Jackknife videos because I put the most kind of passion into them. This build is the updated version of my previous videos build. This is the one you've seen in the two or three fight videos I put up with it. So I did explain the changes I've made in one of the, I think it was in the versus the Iron video, but I thought I'd just make the video, show people the changes, talk about them and why they are there, just to kind of explain myself. So I just wanted to get this video out. I've got a bit of a sore throat at the minute, so there might be a bit of throat clearing in this video. I do apologise in advance for that. But yeah, this build is, I feel, the most consistent build I've made in a long time. It's the build I have the most confidence in since the one that won me Nationals. I'm really enjoying it. It rarely doesn't do what I want it to do. It's so hard for my opponent to deal with that it's just really good. You've seen it if you've watched my previous fight videos with it. You've seen how consistent it is and how easy I get into like shining as soon as I can, and how much damage the impact can put out. So yeah, I will just quickly go through it. It won't be as long as my previous video. I'll kind of skim through to a degree the stuff that's not really changed. I'll talk about it if the way it's functioned has changed, but yeah, I'll just kind of blast through like the dragon arms and stuff. I'll just kind of blast through, but yeah. So Shining Dragon is still going to be our buddy because we still run 4 copies of him. He is your first card. I was going to say first ride then, this isn't Vanguard. Your first turn call. Ideally you do go first. So with the deck this way works, it's pretty easy to get him opening hand and then just call him out, slap him in the centre. Ideally put a second soul into him just in case your opponent can destroy him and that's not the card you want to use the overturn on. You do want to use the overturn as quickly as possible, but still use it wisely. You still need to survive your opponent's turn to be able to kill them on your next turn. So slap it in the middle, wait for the right time to use the overturn and then just use it. So as soon as the overturn's activated, this deck just ramps up in terms of aggression. So it's not essential to kind of sit on it for like the main play, because if you think your opponent's not able to do much that turn, just stop them maybe getting a bit more gauge or draw or life or anything like that that could get them into something. And then just survive, and then next turn just obliterate your opponent. Lots of multi-attacks, lots of high crits, everything like that. So yeah, I'm going to assume you know what most of these cards do at this point. I'm not going to explain everything again. If you want to go into full descriptions of stuff that I haven't explained, it's because they're old cards that I had in my previous video, so I suggest watching that as well if you want actual descriptions. Next for Jacks, we'll still run 4 copies of Galaxy Dragon and Jackknife, still a staple in Starjack builds. He isn't as much as a focus in this build as he usually is, but he's just there because he's useful. Either if you've kind of milled through your Shining or you've used Overturn and you've got an impact in the drop, if your opponent's either survived a big turn or you've just done it because you've got too many of them in your hand, you can call this out, attack, and then obviously if you used your Overturn, call the impact for free on top of him, build, get more attacks off, build up your soul, everything like that. So Galaxy just is useful for multiple reasons. And finally for Jacks, 2 copies of Aster. I bumped my number of Jacks down. I've always kind of said 12 Jacks was a good number, the size 2 ones anyway, just for consistency, but this build is a lot more consistent, so it doesn't need to run as many. So we still run 2 copies of Jackknife Aster. You know, if you want to run Hero Jack or anything else in this place, you can, but I just want to survive burn damage basically. 100 demons. A Thor now deals a lot of penetrate damage. Sun Dragon's coming up with that Bile impact that burns you for 5 is ridiculous because they can restand it as well. Yeah, I don't want to deal with that, so I just want to call this out and be like, right, you can't burn me for anything, especially once again Sun Dragons if they can't destroy this as long as you have the Dragon Arms in the soul. So yeah, it's just a kind of safety net against effect damage, making sure once again you're surviving your opponent's turn so you can then kill them next turn. Pretty much. Simple as that. For size 1s, we run 3 copies of Dimension E. I can't remember if this was at 2 in my last build. Either way, now it's at 3. You play a little bit more dangerously with your gauge in this build, so you just want to use this to minimise your gauge usage. The draw is always useful as well. So if you saw in, I think it was the Thunder Empire video, in the last game of that fight, I worked out if everything had hit and everything had gone off, because I think I killed him before I had the chance to do all I could do. It was something like 30 damage for no gauge. Just because I had this out, I could call Galaxy for free, and then I could call the impact for free on top of him, and then impact call another impact for free, and then like into the future, stuff like that. Just so much aggression and damage for 0 gauge just because of this card helping out as well. So yeah, 3 copies of Dimensioni. And finally for size 1s, 2 copies of Quantum Ruler. I've took Jackknife SD out because he's not as necessary in this build. You don't, once again, you ideally just want to get your Shining out. It doesn't really matter what's in his soul to a degree, because it's just going to be there to use for the overturn. So you don't need SD to dig as much into your deck for certain Dragon Arms. Your Impact will do that for you because you can search your deck. You can usually call multiple. So if you need a few specific cards, it's so easy to search them. And then you usually use Gauge before you get your Jack out, and I'll show you why later. So it's not an issue having something in the drop. So Quantum Ruler just helps get the extra Gauge because once again you play dangerously with it, and just an extra card in your hand. So if you don't know what it does, I've had this in previous builds, but I didn't my last one. So when this card enters the field, if you have a Neo Dragon on your field with 1 or more soul, put the top card of your deck into your Gauge and draw a card, and that's once per turn. So 2 up's been fine. These numbers seem a little low, only 5 size 1s. If you want to bump them up, you can, but I found it's pretty okay numbers. You don't need them, but they are just helpful sometimes. Next, moving on to Dragon Arms, still 3 copies of Triple Buster. Extra crit, extra power, and the Penetrate, always useful against center heavy decks. The power's, once again, really useful in this build just for certain things, especially if the impact that's 11k and you want to hit over some of these 12ks, the Granthes, your Gaia and stuff like that. Just useful. Helps normal jacks hit over stuff like a Thora as well. Anything with a big defense. So, Triple Buster, always good. Still 1 copy of Jackknife. Most counter spells now null. So this being able to, when it's in the soul of an impact monster, say this attack can't be nulled is so much more useful, especially if you're having multiple attacks. Your opponent has multiple shields in hand, it's a dead hand. You don't need to rely on like multiple Garbalankers, stuff like that. So yeah, this card is just ideal. Once again, you really need it at 1 because you just, when you go into the impact, you search it out if you haven't got it in the drop zone already. It's not an issue to get into. Size 1 Dragon Arms, we have bumped Sworbit up to 4 because he's much more useful in this build for both his effects. The double attack is always good. More attacks means you're more likely to kill your opponent, and then just extra if you know you're sat on Shining, your opponent's got an open center, card on either side, and those attacks are hitting, those cards are getting destroyed as well. Little things like that. And then the items are much more important in this build, so you want to be getting into them, you want to be putting this into the soul and then removing it, excuse me, to search out your item to make the deck more consistent, as well I'll show you in a bit. So yeah, Sworbit is much more important in this build. 4 copies is highly recommended. Next, 2 copies of Weiger still, because as I said, you do play dangerous with Gauge, especially if you go against something like Abigail or something that can remove your Gauge. If you need to help build it back up, this is just helpful. 3 copies of Mayday for the multi-attacking, for calling Astra on your opponent's turn. If you want to kind of, if you didn't think you're going to finish your opponent, or if you just use your first turn Shining Dragon or Jackknife, and then you've used the overturn, and this is still in the soul, you can call your Astra over it to negate an attack, to stop any kind of effect damage, anything like that. Or just on your turn, get more impact calls for essentially free once you've used the overturn. So Mayday is still very, very useful. And finally for Dragon Arms, 1 copy of Garbalanka. This is just for pretty much for against stuff like Key and Asterism effect. You know, cards that are going to make your opponent go, well actually I can't lose this turn no matter what you do. Well, you can go, well yes you can with this. So yeah, this is still why we run 1 copy just in case. It's not essential, but it still can be useful in certain situations. So yeah, I think 1's fine, especially with the searchability of this deck. So yeah. So for impacts, we have bumped Genesik Battle Riser up to 4. He's the main focus of the deck, he's the main aggro, he's the big killer. As soon as you go into this card, you're usually doing it to kill your opponent. You can go into him defensively with Mayday, say you've used your overturn, but your opponent still managed to get a bit of stuff out. You can go, ooh, Mayday, call this for free, get 2 soul, and then kind of sit on it for a bit more defense. But ideally he is the aggressor of the deck. So you call him, get a card from drop, search your deck for the ideal Dragon Arms that you need, you know, something like Jackknife, or Triple Buster if you're short a bit of an attack, or just want an extra crit, anything like that. Genesik is so good, calling for free is amazing. If you can call multiple in 1 turn, that's ideal. but usually calling them out, you're usually putting Swarbit in the soul, getting a double attack. You've got any Into the Futures in hand, you're going to be swinging for 3 to 4 to up to even 5 crit every time he attacks. Really hard for your opponent to deal with. You really mean only like 2 or 3 attacks need to hit out of a possible 4 to 6 on top of whatever else you've had earlier in the turn. So yeah, idea 4 is the number to run in this set. Next, the big new addition to the deck, which a lot of people looked at and were like, what, why, what is this? This is Cosmo Saber Gold Ritter. This is quite an old card. It's from like the mid to late 100 sets. It is equip cost to pay 1 gauge. If there is 3 or more cards in the soul of cards in your field, this card gets 2 critical. Ignore that, we don't use that at all. I have never equipped this item whatsoever. It is used for its second ability of discard this card and pay 2 gauge. If you do, search your deck for 1 monster with Jackknife in its card name and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck. So this is why I was really happy with my previous build, but I was just like, it's just a little inconsistent. I wish there was a way to search Jackknives out that I need. And then I was looking through all the stuff that I had, and then I came across this because I'd forgotten it existed, and I was like, oh, there is a card that can search me out Jackknives that I need. It's this. And this is very searchable with Swarbit. So you just, ideally you either open with this or you Swarbit into it and then you go, okay, drop it. Search my Shining. If you've already got your Shining, search for the Impact. Or if you feel like you're going to need Aster or Galaxy. Just so easy to do. As I say, you can play a little bit dangerously with your gauge because the Impact call is free once you hit the overturn. You open a 3 gauge, it's 2 to drop this, 1 to call out Shining. You set then, you've paid the... And then once you've blown your overturn, next turn charge and draw, call another Jack out, and then start going free Impact plays. You don't need any more gauge, basically. If you get more, it's great, you know, it helps with stuff like Garblanca, but I found it hasn't... I've rarely been in the situation like, oh god, I wish I had more gauge. It doesn't matter. This card just makes the deck so consistent that you don't really need it. So the paying 2 gauge to use its ability isn't as much as a hindrance. I think that's why no one ever played it before, because that cost seemed too steep. But now it's really not a problem. And we still run 1 copy of Radiant Star Linkage. Just because items are so searchable, you run 4 copies of Swarbit. You can do multiple searches. So once you've got set up, if you've used all your Gold Ritters or you feel you don't need them anymore because your hand's fine, you can just get a linkage if you really need it, if you've got the gauge. It's not essential, but it has helped me to the point where I feel like I can't take it out because it's been there for me sometimes just to get that 1 extra attack off just to finish my opponent. So still 1 copy. Finally, for spells, we have bumped Into the Future up to 4 copies because we ideally want to be removing that Swarbit to get the search off to then ditch the Gold Ritter for the Jackknife we need, or just get extra attacks off, rest one of your opponent's cards that's going to be an issue. Anything like that, Into the Future is just really useful. So 4 copies is ideal, so you hit it as regularly as possible. Plus it's just a goddamn nice looking card. I love Into the Future. So yeah, it's got so many uses that you'd be an idiot not to run it at 4. Still 3 copies of Starbeliever. Gets the extra draw, removes the Swarbit to get the search off. Extra life, so it's basically you cast this, you remove Swarbit. It negates the pain in the life for the search because you get it back. And then you've drawn 2 extra cards as well. So helps build that hand up. You get quite a big hand with obviously searching and that, and Starbeliever, and then this card, Dragon Arms Factory. Discard Dragon Arms from your hand, draw 2 cards. Still helps with the setup if you do struggle. Like I said, usually you don't now. Usually you can just, like usually I'll call like a size 1, or I'll be able to get a Jack out, put Swarbit into the soul, remove it, search, get my Shining out. I got plenty of gauge and stuff in the drop at that point. Dragon Arms Factory is just extra draws. Anything like that, you want to, you got one of your size 3 Dragon Arms in your hand, you want to get it to the drop zone as quickly as possible. This just helps with that. Two copies of Jackknife Repair, just for a little bit more gauge to get something extra in the soul if you've built your drop zone up a little bit. Really pretty much self-explanatory. Starter Repair is just pretty useful. And finally, 3 copies of Phase Seal Chain. This is just if your opponent survives your turn. As I say, you usually sat on like anywhere of like a 5 to 10, something crazy. You can get crazy amounts of soul. So you sat on that. Your opponent could still possibly get through that. If stuff like bats, chaos can get lots of multi attacks off. So this just says, like if you saw in my Thunder Empire video as well, they activated key, and I was sat on a massive soul jack, and then they went in for their attacks, and I was like, okay, cast this, and they couldn't do anything, and their turn ended and they lost. So, because that's how key works. So yeah, it's just really useful for stuff like that. Once again, you just need to survive your opponent's turn, no matter what you do. Just survive, because you can do a lot with a little in terms of like gauge and hand. You know, as long as you can get your impact out, usually you can kill your opponent. So yeah, facial change just ensures you survive, and usually it helps you keep like a jack on the field, so you can just get an extra few more attacks off. So that's the deck. In terms of sideboard, I know I haven't shown sideboard for the ones of my decks, I don't tend to focus on it that much. Like, I'll only really focus on a sideboard if I'm going for a big tournament. So, but I always have Jack's sideboard ready. So nothing's really changed. I still run 3 copies of Loyalty for the Chaos matchup. All I've done is I've took out, what was it? Tractor Beam, was it, that I had? Because I was like, oh, because I'm scared of Zwei, but it didn't really matter. I'm Zwei, I'm scared of Azzy, but it doesn't really matter, you just overturn it. Like, you go first, ideally, sit on Jack, and even if, especially in Iron, if you saw it, it doesn't matter if you destroy the Razzie Dahaka, because you can just go into Jagalaxan, and then they can't nullify your single attacks off your impact monsters anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So, yeah. Obstruct is, merely cast this card on your opponent's turn, pay 1 life, counter for this and the next turn, each player cannot draw cards by their own effects. So it can screw you over as well, but if you feel you're in a pretty good position, you know, Gold Ritter adds a card to your hand, you don't draw it, so that's fine. This is mostly for stuff like Thunder Empire, that as soon as you cast this, like, all the size 1s become useless, because they can't get any draw of anything, apart from, I think, Connect Ninja adds, because you look at the top 3, but then anything like Sphere or Globes or anything like that, you don't get the draws off that. They don't get the draws off the card that, when destroys your whole field, and they draw for that many, or the new card that's coming out where they draw for each world. It just stops stuff like that. It's just useful. It just, once again, it makes sure you survive. You don't always really need your draws. They're just helpful more than essential. So Obstruct is a very good option for the sideboard. And once again, 3 copies of Antimatter Cloud, just because there's a lot of annoying size 3s out there. Athora, Iron Azzy, lots of stuff in Chaos you might not want to deal with. So yeah. And finally, 2 copies of Vishal, just because we don't want to get our effects nulled. You know, if you get Style of Justice, there's certain few other things. You know, if your opponent runs Overturned Drum, you have this in Soul, it means it can't just blow up your centre no matter how much Soul you sat on. So it's just useful for that. So yes, that will be it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you have any more questions, do post them down in the comments and I'll answer them as best as I can. As I said, I'm so happy with this build. I really, really like it. I'm really looking forward to, from the preview of Ace, it looks like we're getting more Jackknife support, which is great. I was worried once they started showing off the Astrology Dragons, whatever they're called, Celestials, that was going to be it for Neo Dragon support, but it doesn't seem to be the case, at least for the first set. So they've already confirmed. I'll probably make a complete video about all the news that they've announced for the new sets. Like, they've pretty much said there's going to be Dragon, Star Dragon and Ancient, I believe, support at least a little bit in every single main set. So there's always going to be the possibility of getting more Jack support now, or Neo Dragon, or anything. You know, hopefully they make some of these cross astrology cards, whatever they are, that are useful across multiple decks. Like Prisms began to be. Like, no, early Prism stuff tended to be focused mainly on Prisms, but then we kind of got stuff like Crystallization Phenomenon that could be used across multiple decks. So I'm hoping we get stuff like that. But I'm quite excited for Ace stuff as well. I will be making probably Gargantua Dragon and the Star Dragon stuff. Not Star Dragon. Yeah, the Star Dragon World stuff. I'm going to learn what they are. I think they're originally called Celestials and now they're like Astrology Dragons or something like that. But the idea of that deck sounds fun. Whether or not it's going to be very good. The main card seems pretty good so far, so the more versions that we get, I think the more powerful it's going to be. But I will never stray from Jack. It is going to be my main deck. So yeah, I'm going to end this video here because it's gone on a bit longer than I wanted it to. But yeah, so as I said, if you guys have any questions, post them down below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, I will be doing, obviously, more decks when Soul Strife comes out. But I might wait until after our team tournament because I want to keep a few things secret. What I'll be playing, what I'm building. There's a deck I have in mind, or there's 2 decks I have in mind that I don't really want people to know about prior to teams. so and get any ideas from, because I don't want to face them personally, which sounds a bit selfish. I understand, but it's the game. I want to win. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to teams. If you are at the UK Team Nationals in Cardiff, I will be there. I think it's the 1st of June, July? 1st of July, sorry, yeah, it's the weekend, end of June, start of July. So yeah, I will be there with my team. We are hoping to win, but I'm just looking forward to playing new people. So yeah. Once again, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Hit notifications if you want to see all my videos as soon as possible, because YouTube likes to mess with things, so we have to beg for this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I feel awful doing it, but please. So thank you very much for this video, for watching this video. Thank me for this video, I suppose. I'll stop rambling now. Have a good day, guys. See you soon.